By the time I got the call, my hands still smelled like drywall dust from the last job, and the roads out past Oakville were already slick with the first real snow of the season. The dispatcher said something about a furnace down at a property off Lakeshore, big house. Owner sounded frantic. I didn't think much of it. Furnaces go down in Ontario in November all the time, and rich people panic about it faster than anyone. The gate was open when I pulled in, which should have told me something was actually wrong. I parked behind two other trucks I didn't recognize, grabbed my bag, and walked into a front hall that felt colder than the driveway. Somewhere upstairs a baby was crying, thin and exhausted, the kind of cry that's been going a while. A woman in a cardigan 3 sizes too big for the weather was pacing near the stairs with a phone against her ear, saying, "I understand, but you told me Tuesday," to someone who clearly wasn't helping her fast enough. She saw me and her whole face changed, that flash of relief people get when a stranger with a toolbox walks in and might actually solve something. "You're from the furnace company?" "Yeah, Dominic, thank God." She said it like a prayer, not a pleasantry. "It's been out since 6 this morning. I've got a 6-month-old upstairs, and 2 furnace guys who already came and left without fixing anything." "Okay, can somebody show me the mechanical room, and can everybody else give me space to actually look at it?" One of the earlier techs started explaining his theory before I'd even set my bag down. I held up a hand. He kept talking. I looked at the woman's instead. 2 minutes, I said. "Just let me see it first." She turned to the room, not loud, but with a voice that ended every other conversation happening in it at once. "You heard him. Let him work." That was the first quiet second since I'd walked in. She led me down herself, moving fast even in wool socks on cold tile, like she already knew this house better than I paid to maintain it. "It cut out around 6, she said. "Then the guy before you swapped a part that wasn't the problem, made it worse, then left saying he'd order something. I don't even know what he ordered." "That tracks," I said. Guys panic and start replacing whatever's closest instead of actually finding it. That got the smallest look from her, like she wanted to laugh but the day hadn't earned it yet. The mechanical room was in the basement, past a laundry area bigger than my old apartment. I traced the ignition line, checked the pressure switch, found what I actually expected. A blocked exhaust vent from the first hard freeze, iced shut, tricking the whole system into thinking there was no draft, shutting everything down as a safety measure. Simple once you saw it. Everybody upstairs had been treating it like a mystery because nobody had gone outside to actually look. I went back up wet from clearing the vent by hand, and half the house was waiting on me the way people wait on a doctor after surgery. "It's not the furnace," I said. "It's the vent it iced over. I'm clearing it, running a heat trace line so it doesn't happen again, and you'll have heat back in 20 minutes. The tech who'd left earlier called to check in right then, and before I could even explain, she said into the phone, "Don't worry about it. He's handling it," and hung up like she meant every word of it. 20 minutes later, the furnace kicked on with that low mechanical sigh houses make when they finally exhale. The baby's crying upstairs slowed, then stopped. She actually closed her eyes for a second, right there in the hallway, like she'd been holding her breath since 6 that morning. "I'm Margot," she said, once it was quiet enough to introduce herself properly. "Dominic, you came into an absolute disaster and fixed it in under an hour. I wouldn't call it fixed yet. I still need to come back and finish the heat trace once it's not covered in ice." "No," she said, walking me to the door, "but you're the first person all day who made it sound like it would actually get fixed." That line followed me out to the truck more than it should have. She handed me a card before I left. A direct line, not the office number. "Use this when you come back, saves everyone a headache." Nothing strange in how she said it. Still, I sat in the driver's seat a second longer than I needed to, snow collecting on the windshield, telling myself it was just a job. I told myself I wasn't thinking about Margot after that, which was a lie, because I checked that card twice the next day for no reason at all. 3 days later, right around lunch, sitting in a Tim Hortons parking lot between calls, my phone buzzed. Not a long message. "Furnace is making a new noise. Different from before. Can you come by tonight instead of waiting for the appointment?" I told her I could be there by 6. The house looked different in daylight, fading to evening without a crisis running through it. Quiet driveway, a wide view over the escarpment, snow settling clean instead of melting into panic. She opened the door before I even knocked. "No emergency this time," she said. "You texted like it was one anyway. That was on purpose. I wanted the same guy." I laughed once, mostly because I didn't know what else to do with that. Inside, the house felt warmer than I remembered, and not just because the furnace worked. I followed her down to check the vent line, found the noise was nothing, just the heat trace settling into the cold snap, normal for the first week it runs. Simple fix, 5 minutes of work. She stood near the doorway while I checked it, not hovering, not leaving either. "You always this calm?" she asked. "Only when people are watching." "That's not true." I looked up from where I was crouched by the vent. How would you know? She leaned against the frame, arms crossed. Because guys who need attention don't tell a house full of strangers to be quiet and let them work. There was something in how she said it that made the whole exchange feel less casual than it should have. When I finished, I packed up slower than I needed to. She noticed. You in a rush? Paperwork waiting on me. That sounds tragic, I smiled. Comes with the job. She glanced toward the kitchen. I haven't eaten. Stay 10 minutes. Let me feed you before you go do something tragic. I should have said no. It would have been easier. But I was tired and curious and wanted to see what she looked like when nothing in the house was broken. So I stayed. The kitchen was enormous, and she moved through it like someone who didn't care that it was enormous. She opened the fridge, looked inside for a second too long. This is the embarrassing part. I own a house that could feed 30 people, and there's basically nothing in it. There's always eggs, though. That's a very Furnace-gay answer. Eggs solve more problems than people give them credit for. That got a real laugh out of her, not the polite kind. 10 minutes turned into almost an hour at the counter with plates we both pretended were temporary. She asked about my work, how long I'd been doing calls on my own, whether I liked it. I asked the safe questions back. How long she'd lived here, whether she worked from home. Why a house this big felt like a hotel nobody had checked into yet. That last one made her go quiet for a second. Because most of it's for other people. Dinners, things I'm expected to host for my husband's old business partners, favors I'm still paying off from a marriage that ended 2 years ago, and somehow left me with all the obligations and none of the company. There was no self-pity in it. That made it land harder. When I finally stood to leave, she said, "Come with me for a second," and walked me down a hallway I hadn't noticed the first night, opening a door at the end of it. Inside was a room that didn't match the rest of the house at all. Less polished, more lived in. An easel by the window, jars of brushes, canvases turned halfway around like she wasn't ready for anyone to look too closely. The room smelled like linseed oil and coffee gone cold. I just stood there. "This," she said, "is where I go when I don't want anyone's opinion. You paint a little." The room said it was more than a little. Too much work in it, too much time. Does anyone else know about this room? Almost no one. That did something to me I couldn't explain right there. Not that she'd shown me something private, but that she'd done it without making a thing of it. Like she wanted to see what I'd do with it. So I told her the truth. I liked this room more than the rest of the house. She studied my face a second, then nodded slowly, like I'd answered a question she hadn't asked out loud. After that, seeing her stopped feeling accidental. There was always a reason first, a breaker that tripped, a strange hum near the garage that turned out to be nothing, a thermostat acting up. Small, believable excuses. Then one evening she texted asking if I was done working, because she was driving out to the lake and didn't want to go alone. I went. Her car was nicer than anywhere I'd ever sat, but she drove it one-handed like it was just a car. We ended up at a fish shack outside Grimsby where nobody cared who she was, eating out of paper containers at a picnic table facing the water. Wind coming off Lake Ontario hard enough to keep everyone else inside. It was the first time I saw her fully relaxed. No calls, no staff, no polished voice for other people. Just Margot, hair loose from the wind, holding a coffee in both hands, asking if I'd always planned on doing this kind of work. "No," I said. "I want my own shop eventually. Small place. Do restoration work on old furnaces and boilers, the vintage stuff nobody wants to touch anymore, when I'm not out doing calls." "You never told me that. Didn't think it mattered." "It matters," she said quietly. "You say things like they're small when they're not." I didn't answer right away. Looked out at the water, then back at her. "What about you? What do you want that doesn't look good on paper?" For the first time since I'd met her, she hesitated. "Peace. And one person in my life who isn't calculating something every time I walk into a room." The way she said it took the air out of the moment, because by then I already knew this wasn't a bored, wealthy woman, amusing herself with the guy who fixed her furnace. It was something quieter and more serious, and sitting across from her at that little table, with the wind cutting in, off the lake, I had the steady, strange feeling we'd already gone too far to pretend it was casual. After that night, the excuses got thinner, then disappeared. She started calling with no reason at all. Some nights I'd be halfway home with the radio low, and my hands still smelling like solder, and she'd ask where I was, and 20 minutes later I'd be parking near the escarpment road where her car sat waiting. Other nights I'd come by once everyone else had gone, and we'd sit in that studio with the lamps low, talking like we were making up for years we'd somehow missed. That room became ours before anything else did. She'd paint, not performing it, not asking what I thought every 5 minutes, just letting me be there. I'd sit on the bench by the window with a beer or a coffee, watching her work in an old paint-stained hoodie she changed into when she was done being whoever the rest of the world needed. Seeing her like that hit harder than every polished version of her ever had. One night she put the brush down. Why do you keep looking at me like that? Like what? Like you're trying to figure out if I'm real. Maybe I am. She wiped her hands on a rag and came closer. And, I still don't know. That smile showed up small and private. Good. I'd hate to be predictable. She was close enough by then that I could smell paint and the last of her perfume from earlier in the day. Close enough the room went quiet in a different way. You know this is a bad idea, I said. For who? For both of us. She held my eyes. That's not an answer. I should have stepped back. I didn't. She closed the last inch herself. The first kiss wasn't rushed or careless. It felt like something we'd both been holding in long enough that when it finally happened, neither of us bothered pretending to be surprised. After that, everything about being around her changed shape. It wasn't just attraction, even though that part was impossible to ignore. It was the way she softened when it was only me. The way she'd lean into my side on that studio couch, like she was more tired than she let anyone else see. The way she actually listened when I talked, like nothing I said was small. And that was the dangerous part, because the more natural it felt in private, the stranger it felt in my head. I'd leave her place, sit in my truck with my tool bag on the seat, and just stare through the windshield, trying to connect the two versions of my life. In one, I was doing service calls, arguing with suppliers, drinking gas station coffee, trying to save enough to open my own shop someday. In the other, I was in a hidden studio with a woman who lived in a house bigger than my whole building, kissing me like I was the one place she could finally breathe. It stopped feeling temporary to her before it did to me. Or maybe she just admitted it first. The shift came when she asked me to come to a fundraiser dinner downtown, something for a hospital board she sat on. Nothing big, she said. Show up, have one drink, leave early. She said it casually, but I heard the test underneath it. I looked down at my work boots by her door and laughed once. You serious? Yes, Margot. I'm not built for that room. Something shifted in her face right away. Not anger, more like disappointment that I'd missed something obvious. She crossed the room, stopped in front of me. You keep saying things like that, and every time you do, it sounds less humble and more insulting. Insulting to who? To me, she said. Because you're telling me I don't know my own mind. That shut me up. She kept going quieter now. I know exactly what my world is. That's the problem, Dominic. I'm with you because I don't have to perform every second. I don't have to guess what you want from me. I don't have to be impressive. Do you understand how rare that is for me? I wanted to believe it. I just didn't fully yet. I'm not some new experience for you? I hated the words the second they left my mouth, but she didn't flinch. She looked at me a long moment, then took my hand and pulled me toward the studio window. Look at me, I did. If I wanted novelty, I could find it in one evening and be bored by breakfast. That's not what this is. The room went very still. Then she said the thing that finally cut through the noise in my head. When you leave, the whole house changes. There wasn't a clever answer to that. I put my hand against her face, and she leaned into it like she'd been waiting all day for someone to touch her, without wanting anything else from her. I went to the fundraiser. Hated the first 10 minutes. Too many tailored suits. Too many people pretending not to stare while clearly staring. Too many men greeting her, like they were already halfway into a negotiation. But Margot stayed close the whole night, not dramatically. Just enough that I understood it was deliberate. When one guy asked me with a fake friendly smile how we knew each other, she answered before I could. He's with me, simple words. I felt them all the way down. Later, back at the house, I said, you didn't have to do that. Yes, she said, stepping out of her heels by the studio door. I did. That was the night I stopped treating this like something passing through her life. And when I stayed over for the first time, snow falling quiet outside, her asleep with one arm across me like she had no intention of letting go, I understood something I'd been resisting for weeks. In private, this already felt real. The only question left was whether it could survive once there was no hiding it. After that, the balance shifted again, quieter this time, which somehow made it heavier. I had a toothbrush at her place before I noticed it happening. She started texting me ordinary things in the middle of the day. Did you eat? How bad is the wind on your side of the city? Tell me when you're done tonight. The kind of message that only matters once. Somebody started building you into their day without asking permission. That should have made me feel steady. Instead, it made me nervous in a new way, because I kept waiting for the part where it corrected itself. Where she'd wake up one morning, look around at her actual life, her friends, her money, that whole polished world that knew how to hold a wine glass and say the right thing at a dinner table, and remember what it was supposed to look like. Then there was me, showing up with nicked up hands in a truck that smelled like solder flux and coffee. I never said all of that outright, but she read it on me anyway. One Sunday we were in the studio moving an easel because one leg kept catching on the floor. Nothing romantic about it, just both of us laughing because it was heavier than it looked. Once we got it settled, she stepped back and studied me. You're doing it again. Doing what? Leaving before you leave. I'm standing right here. No, she said. You're bracing. That landed because it was true. I leaned against the wall and looked away. I don't know where this goes, Margot. She got quiet, not cold, careful. It goes where we decide it goes. That sounds easy when you say it. It isn't easy. I didn't say easy. I nodded once, but I still wasn't there, and she saw that too. She crossed the room, took my face in both hands. Tell me the ugliest version of it. The one in your head. I let out a breath and gave it to her. That I'm something private. Something that feels good with the doors closed and the rest of your life out of the room. And one day you'll decide that's all it ever was. She didn't speak right away. I saw anger flicker across her face, but not at me, at the idea itself. Then she walked out of the studio without a word. For one terrible second I thought, that's it, you finally said too much. But I heard her boots quick on the hallway floor, then the front door, then silence. I stood there like an idiot. She was gone maybe 6 minutes. When the door opened again, I stepped into the hall. She was carrying a flat folder under one arm and a set of keys in the other, her face carrying that same look from the first night with the furnace. The one that said everyone else could panic. She'd already made up her mind. Margot. What? Come outside. We walked out to the drive. Snow from earlier had crusted over, catching the last of the light. Parked near the gate was a truck I recognized immediately, because I'd pointed one out months ago driving past a shop on the Queensway. Not the exact one, but close enough to knock the air out of me. Late 60s, fully restored, deep green, chrome catching what light was left. I just stared at it. Then at her. No, she held up one hand. You're saying that before you know the rest. The truck's already too much. It's not only the truck. She handed me the folder. Property papers. My brain didn't process it at first, then it did, and I looked up so fast I almost dropped the whole thing. A unit off Dundas, brick building, 2 bays, small office up front, storage in back. The exact kind of place I'd described to her that night by the lake, when I thought I was just talking, not being remembered. My mouth went dry. Margot. Her voice stayed even, her eyes didn't. I bought it 3 weeks ago. The truck came out of restoration yesterday. The permits are already moving. I stood there, folder in one hand, keys in the other, the ground shifting a few inches under me. You can't do this. I can, and I am. That's not the point. Then tell me the point. I tried. Nothing came out right. Too much money, too big, too final. All of it sounding weak next to what was actually happening. She'd listened when I talked about the life I wanted, like it was some far-off thing I probably didn't deserve, and she'd built an answer to it. Not flowers, not a speech, a future with an address. She stepped closer. I'm not buying you, Dominic. I'm removing every way you could still tell yourself I don't mean this. Why? Was all I had left. She smiled, small and steady. Because I want the life where I know where you are at the end of the day. Because I want the shop, the bad coffee, your tools everywhere. That ridiculous truck in my driveway. Because I'm done being doubted by people who claim to care about me. And because I love you. That last part landed hardest, coming in the middle of everything practical and impossible. No build-up, no performance, just true. I don't remember closing the distance between us. But I remember the feel of her. The folder bent awkwardly against both of us. Both of us laughing once, breathless, because there was nothing else left to do. Behind her, the truck keys caught the light in my hand, and ahead of me was a building with my whole future written on the front page of it.